Now that we knew which building my son was in, I figured that the cameras did not need to stay on anymore. We took the opportunity to disable the cameras on the base before leaving the control room, and then began our descent back down to the ground floor. With the surveillance system down, all we had to worry about were the soldiers patrolling the grounds. I peered out of a side window in the ground floor's lounge area. I could see the building my son was held captive in. Thankfully, it did not look too heavily guarded. Since the Doubt possessed such great speed, I had him head over first. Like a flash of light, the Doubt bolted for the building. He dispatched the one inept guard, looked around the corners of the building, and gave me a signal that it was safe to head over. Upon arriving at the door to the building, I noticed that there was an electronic card reader. I searched the guard and found a key card on a lanyard around their neck. Okay, so I swiped this card like so, and it's prompting me for a PIN number. What PIN? I frantically looked over the card for some clue as to what the PIN could be, but could not find one. After a fruitless search, the Doubt began probing the guard's mind.
Relax, I got this. Try 31337.
Elite in Leet speak? Really? I entered the code on the pin pad, and the door opened. We dragged the soldier in the building and closed the door behind us. Inside the building, there were several cells for monitoring regime prisoners. We left the guard just inside the door and began to search for the cell containing my son. The Doubt and I alternated between the hallways.
I found him!
My son was in the third row in and 4 cells down. I grabbed the bars of the cell and shook them to get my son's attention. Bobby! Bobby, wake up! Daddy's here! There was no response from my son, not even a twitch. He appeared to be in good physical shape, but there were some bags under his eyes, implying sleep deprivation. I have never known him to be a particularly heavy sleeper, but sleepy or not, I needed to get him out of here.
Your son appears to be trapped within his own mind. I have seen this used by...
Tell me about it later. We have to go. In an act of desperation, I shot the padlock off the door. I flung my son over my shoulder, keeping one hand free to use my sword or gun if need be. We headed for the door and heard soldiers frantically running around outside. I drew my gun and breached the door. Upon entering the grounds, the soldiers stopped in their tracks. I raised my gun and, much to my surprise, they began to surrender one by one. What are you doing?
Are you a cameo?
A what? This must have been what the Doubt and I encountered in the tower. These cameos appeared to be polymorphic species, capable of mimicking people by taking over their body. It was probably either a novice cameo, or couldn't decide on one individual to copy.
How were you able to kill it? We tried shooting at them, but the bullets didn't seem to faze their gelatinous bodies.
With this sword, I sliced it in half and then electrocuted it with the aid of this Doubt.
So they can be killed after all?
What do you mean by that?
The cameos are the puppet masters behind the regime. The reason they were able to take over was that if we destroyed the body they were inhabiting, they would just move on to someone else. We had no idea how to destroy their amorphous forms after they left their shells.
I see. Do you know where their leader is?
The last I heard, they were in Washington, D.C. Why do you ask?
I think it's time we took our country back. Who's with me? We're going to have to coordinate between the other states to loosen their grasp on those territories. Then, we will make our move on the nation's capital.
But there's bound to be hundreds of cameos there. We would need an army.
If we are able to free additional installations in states, we will have our army. The real trick will be arming everyone to combat these cameos.
I think I might be able to help with that. Like I said, there is a doubt nest under the nation's capital. I can teach my kin how to harness electricity like me.
I thought you were kidding about that. Apparently the only part he was kidding about was using his mental drain abilities on Trump. To create a simile, it would be like humans drinking salt water from the Dead Sea. I mean, to be fair, he claims to be such a financial success, but he's filed for bankruptcy how many times? And one of his campaign's pillars was, to paraphrase, use resources to keep out a country's people and then build said country for a wall. Trust me, he didn't need to lose any more brain cells. So it was settled. The doubt would prepare his kind to aid us for reclamation of the United States. I asked him to relay our findings to as many doubt on regime installations as he could, so that they could begin breaking their hold in other states. In the meantime, I needed to take my son to somewhere safe. The only place I could think of that was remotely close was the Republic Sanctuary. My son began to toss, indicating that he was waking up. I set him on his feet and asked if he was okay. I'm fine, Dad. But what's going on? I'll explain along the way. For now, be content in knowing you're safe. After inspiring the recently freed soldiers, the Doubt, my son, and I began our trek back towards the truck. My son's stomach began to grumble. I reached into my satchel and pulled out a protein bar that I had pilfered from a dead regime soldier. This seemed to stave his hunger for the moment. On the road back, my son kept asking questions of my travels thus far. He was particularly interested in the Doubt. I can't say I blamed him. Up until a couple days ago, I didn't even know they existed myself. Can I pet him, Dad? I'm not the one you should be asking, son. It's his call, not mine.
Go ahead. Your father risked his life to save you. It's the least I can do to repay his ambition. Just don't pet my belly. There are some things my feline half don't like that my canine half does. Just keep that in mind and we'll be fine.
My son began to pet the Doubt's head. I started to hear a faint purr, and the Doubt's rear leg began to twitch in delight. I could tell that the two of them were going to be great friends, much like the Doubt and I already were. Now that the plan to usurp the regime was in motion, all that we needed to do was to free those under the cameo's control, unite with the Doubt kin, and mount our offensive on the capital. We would need to make one minor stop before we finalize our approach, at the Republic Sanctuary. The Suburban Samurai, a radio drama written and narrated by Don Rosenberger, also starring Jake Hilty as the Doubt, Barbara Hilty as Soldier 1, and Josh Hilty as Soldier 2. The music used in this episode of Suburban Samurai was composed by Bobby Prince, Dope, and Nobou Uematsu.